Students, all of you are quite welcome to Balu's class. Here we have to take our text behind. In this book, we'll have a chapter named Packing. This chapter named Packing is written by Jerome. So we have to go through the profile about Jerome. Jerome Jerome was an English writer and humorist, best known for the comic travelogue, Three Men in a Boat. Other works include the essay collections Idle Thoughts of an Idle Fellow and Second Thoughts of an Idle Fellow. Three Men on the Bummel, a sequel to Three Men in a Boat, and several other novels. He was born, that is, Jerome was born on 2nd May 1859, Caldmore, United Kingdom, and he passed away 14th June 1927, Northampton General Hospital, United Kingdom. His education was at St. Mary Le Bon Grammar School. He had two children. Let us go to the story in brief. Writer Jerome liked to pack luggage for trips and announced that he would do the packing. The first sentence starts like this: I said I would pack. I rather pride myself on my packing. Packing is one of those many things that I feel I know more about than any other person living. I embraced the fact upon George and Harris and told them that they had better leave the whole matter entirely to me. They fell into the suggestion with a readiness that had something uncanny about it. George spread himself over the easy chair and Harris cocked his legs on the table. Here is the explanation. Jerome thought that his ability to pack luggage was better than others. He asked his friends George and Harris to leave the task of packing to him. The two friends agreed to his offer instantly, which was strange. George sat comfortably on the easy chair, and Harris bent his knees as he sat on the sofa and kept his feet on the table. Look at the next passage. That is, this was hardly what I intended. What I had meant, of course, was that I should boast the job, and that Harris and George should potter about under my directions. I pushing them aside every now and then with, oh, you, here, let me do it. There, you are simple enough, really teaching them, as you might say. They are taking it in the way they did irritated me. There is nothing does irritate me more than seeing other people sitting about doing nothing when I am working. Here, the intended means planned, and potter about means do some unimportant things. Here, we can say the explanation. That is, by saying that he would pack, the writer did not mean that his friends would sit and relax while he would do all the work. He had meant that he would boss upon them while they would do all the chores. He would nag them and curse them not for knowing the work well, and then he would chip in to sort out the mess that they would create. He was irritated to see them sitting while he did all the work. Then look at the next one. That is, I lived with a man once who used to make me mad that way. He would toil on the sofa and watch me doing things by the hour together. He said it did him real good to look on at me, messing about. Now I am not like that. I can't sit still and see another man slaving and working. I want to get up and superintend and walk around with my hands in my pockets and tell him what to do. It is my energetic nature, I can't help it. Here, he collects, Jerome collects that one he lived with a man who would sit lazily on the sofa all day through and would watch the writer do all the work. The man would say that he enjoyed watching him go around doing all the work. This would make the writer mad with anger. The writer adds that he could not sit idle and watch others work like slaves. On the other hand, he liked to check their work, walk around with his hands in his pockets, and direct them on how to do the work properly. He feels that all he was energetic, it was a part of his nature to behave in that manner. Then come to the next passage, that is, however, I did not say anything but started the packing. It seemed a longer job than I had thought. It was going to be, but I got the bag finished at last, and I sat on it and strapped it. Ain't you going to put the boots in? Said Harris, and looked around, and found I had forgotten them. That is just like Harris. He couldn't have said a word until I had got the bag shut and strapped, of course, and George laughed. One of those irritating, senseless laughs of his. They do make me so wild. Yes, strapped it means closed it, that is the meaning. And wild means mad with anger. Here, the writer did not say anything to his friends and started packing. As he closed it, Harris said that he had forgotten to pack the boots. The writer felt that Harris could have reminded him before he had closed the bag, but he thought that Harris was like that. This was followed by an irritating laughter by George, which made Jerome wild with anger. Then come to the next passage, that is, I opened the bag and packed the boots in, and then just as I was going to close it, a horrible idea occurred to me. Had I packed my toothbrush? I don't know how it is, but I never do know whether I have packed my toothbrush. Here, listen this meaning. Jerome opened the bag at last to keep the boots in it. As he was about to close it, he was struck by a strange thought that he had kept the toothbrush or not. He says that he never remembers as he has packed the toothbrush or not. He got the confusion. Then look at the next passage. My toothbrush is a thing that haunts me when I am traveling and makes my life a misery. I dream that I haven't packed it and wake up in a cold perspiration and get out of bed and hunt for it. And in the morning, I pack it before I have used it and have to unpack again to get it. It is always the last thing I turn out of the bag, and then I repack and forget it and have to rush upstairs for it at the last moment and carry it to the railway station, wrapped up in my pocket handkerchief. Here, haunts means to repeatedly give trouble. Then misery stands for sadness. Cold perspiration means sweat, is produced from our body. Hunt means search. Here, listen the meaning. Jerome adds that while traveling, he always messes up with carrying his toothbrush. He has nightmares of not having packed it, wakes up in sweat and looks for it. In the morning, he packs it before using it, then unpacks the bag to get the brush and uses it, as it is the last thing that comes out of the bag, and he has repacked the bag. He forgets packing it again. At the last moment, he rushes to his room to get the brush, and finally he wraps it in his handkerchief and carries to the railway station in his hand. Then we can note down the next passage, that is, of course, I had to turn every mortal thing out of now. And of course, I could not find it. I rummaged the things up into much the same state that they must have been behaved the world has created, and when chaos reigned. Of course, I found George's and Harris 18 times over, but I couldn't find my own. I put the things back one by one and held everything up and shook it. When I found it inside a boot, I repacked once more. Here, some words are here. That is, mortal thing means everything ordinary thing. Every ordinary thing, mortal thing. Rummaged means searched in a hurried or a careless way. Chaos means confusion. Reigned means ruled. Then come to the meaning. As Jerome was looking for his toothbrush in his bag, he had to remove everything but could not find it. He created a mess. He found his friend's brushes many times but could not find his brush. He kept everything back to the bag one by one, shaking each item, and finally found the brush inside a boot. Then once again, he repacked the bag. Then we can note down the next passage. That is, when I had finished, George asked if the soap was in. I said I didn't care a hang whether the soap was in or whether it wasn't, and I slammed the bag shut and strapped it, and found that I had packed my spectacles in it and had to reopen it. It got shut up finally at 10:05 p.m. And then there remains the hampers to do. Harris said that we should be wanting to start in less than 12 hours time, and thought that he and George had better do the rest. And they agreed and sat down and they had a go. So here so many words are here. That is, didn't care a hang. Didn't care a hang means show no concern or interest. Then slammed means shut the lid forcefully and loudly. Hampers means baskets used to carry food, utensils, etc. That is hampers. Then let us note down the meaning. Listen the meaning. Now, when Jerome closed the bag, George asked if the soap was there inside it. As Jerome was impatient, he replied that he wasn't concerned if it was there or not. Closed the lid and strapped the bag. Then he realized that he had packed his spectacle in it too and had to open it again to get them. Finally, the bag was closed at 10:05 p.m. Then they had to pack the food baskets. Harry said that as they were left with less than 12 hours to leave, they should pack the baskets as well. Harris decided that the food baskets would be packed by him and George and Jerome. Jerome agreed to take his turn for some rest while his friends packed the baskets. Let us go to the next passage. That is, they began in a light-hearted spirit, evidently intending to show me how to do it. I made no comment. I only waited. With the exception of George, Harris is the worst packer in this world, and I looked at the piles of plates and cups and kettles and bottles and jars and pies and stoves and cakes and tomatoes, etc., and felt that the thing would soon become exciting. Here, some words that is given light-hearted spirit. Light-hearted spirit means to be cheerful. Evidently means clearly or obviously. Exception means a person or thing that does not follow the general rule. Let us come to the meaning. That is, George and Harris started packing the hampers in a happy mood. They wanted to show Jerome that they could pack well. Jerome waited for them to create a mess because he considered Harris to be the worst packer in this world. Jerome looked at the piles of plates, cups, kettles, and bottles, the jars, pies, cakes, and tomatoes, which had to be packed into the hampers. He thought that as the boys would mess up, he would be an interesting thing to watch. Then the scene became interesting as they broke a cup at the start. Jerome says that they broke the cup to indicate that they could do that too and make things interesting. Then Harris placed the jar of the strawberry jam on the top of the tomatoes. The tomatoes were squeezed with the jar, and then they removed the damaged tomato with the help of a spoon. Next, George stepped on the butter. Jerome remained silent but sat on the edge of the table to watch the action. His silence irritated his friends. They became nervous and stepped on the things. They kept the things behind them. Later, when they wanted them, they could not find them. They placed the piles on the bottom and kept heavier things on them, which smashed the piece. Then they upset salt over everything, and as for the butter, I never saw two men do more with 1 and 2 pence worth of butter in my whole life than they did. After George had got it off his slipper, they tried to put it in the kettle. It wouldn't go in, and what was in wouldn't come out. They did scrape it out at last and put it down on a chair, and Harry sat on it, and it stuck to him, and they went looking for it all over the room. Here, upset means overturned, and scrape means drag or pull. Let us listen to the meaning. That is, the boys overturned the can of salt on everything. Jerome says that they created a lot of confusion with a small piece of butter. He had not seen anyone create so much mess with butter that was worth 1 and 2 pence. That is, meaning is it was a very small piece, that is all. As they did, George removed it from his slipper and tried to put it to the kettle. As he was unable to do that, he placed it on the chair. Harry sat on it. The butter stuck to him. He stood up, and both the boys went around the room looking for the piece of butter. George looked intently at the empty seat on which he had placed the butter a few minutes ago. He took an oath of truthfulness that he had placed it there not even a minute ago. Then they started round the room again, looking for it, and then they met again in the center and stared at one another. Once again, they searched in the room, that is the meaning. They met in the middle of the room, empty-handed. George said that the disappearance of the butter was the most amazing thing that he had known. Harris said that the disappearance of the butter was a mystery. George saw the butter sticking to Harris' buttocks, and said that it had been there all his while. Harris turned round and asked where it was. George flew to Harris' back and asked him to stand still. They removed the butter and packed it inside the teapot. Here, Jerome's pet dog is also here. Its name is Montmorency, participated in all this. His aim was to interrupt everyone and then get scolded for it. Jerome adds that if Montmorency the dog was able to twist into a place and create a nuisance by angering people and get things thrown at him in return, he felt that he had utilized the day in a good way. So the dog Montmorency's aim was to get people trip over him and scold him. By doing this, he felt that he had fulfilled his aim and would be proud of his achievement. Here, Montmorency sat on the things to be packed. He thought that when George and Harris reached out for the things to be packed, they were reaching out of his cold, wet nose and would bring it forward for them. He stepped into the jam bottle. He shook the teaspoons. He acted as if the lemons were rats and stepped into the hamper to kill those rats. He was stopped by Harris, who hit him with a frying pan. Harris blamed Jerome for encouraging Montmorency for doing all his mischief. Jerome says that a dog like Montmorency did not need encouragement. It was born to be like that and act like that. At 12:50, they had packed the hampers. Harry sat on it and said that hopefully Nothing would break in it. George was indifferent and said that if something broke, it would not matter. As they were ready for bed, they went upstairs to sleep. As they settled in their beds, Harris asked Jerome if he preferred the inside or the outside of the bed. Jerome said that he preferred to sleep on the inside of the bed. This seemed strange to Harris. George asked them that he should wake them up at what time. Harris replied 7, while Jerome wanted to wake up at 6 as he had to write some letters. Harris and Jerome had a discussion on the time and finally they settled on 6:30, each accommodating his time by half an hour. George did not respond as he was asleep. Harris and George made mischief by placing the bathtub next to George's bed so that he would fall out as he woke up on the pretext that this way he would take a bath as soon as he got up. So this is a brief summary about the chapter named Packing. So okay, thank you for listening, all of you. If you have any doubt, don't forget to ask me about this lesson. Thank you.